Hey everyone, today we are going to be talking about histograms. So we're still in our data representation unit. We're still working with statistics. This time we're going to see it using a different representation, which we call a histogram. It's going to look very similar to a bar graph. However, the main thing with a histogram is we are going to be using numbers and only numbers whenever we use a histogram. If we're working with qualitative data, so for example, if I'm talking about red M&Ms versus blue M&Ms versus green M&Ms, then we're going to choose a bar graph. But anytime I'm working with strictly numbers, we will use what we call a histogram. So let's get started. First thing we need to do is, if we are given a set of data, we have to organize it. So I'm going to start by plotting all of these, tallying up all of these data points and filling them into my table. So 50 is going to go here, and 42 is going to go here, and 119 is going to go down here, and 45 will go here, and so you can kind of see the idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to fill this in, and then it'll save us some time. Alright, so once we've tallied up our data, we're just going to figure out how many we have in each section. So I have 0 in my first, what we call bin, 4 in my second bin, 6 in my third bin, 7, 2, and then 3. Once we know this, we are now going to use this data, and we are going to create our histogram. So it's a pretty straightforward process. All I'm going to do is basically draw in bars, and the height of the bar is going to represent the frequency that these numbers occurred. So for 1 to 20, I didn't have anything, so I just leave my bar pretty much non-existent. You don't see it. My second bar is my 21 to 40 group, and I had 4 in that section. So I just draw my bar graph, or not my bar graph, my bar up to 4, and then we're done with that section. Now you're going to notice that when we're doing this histogram, the bars touch each other. And what I mean by that is when I draw in this next one, we do not leave any space in between our bars. So you want to imagine them, they're standing shoulder to shoulder, there's no space in between them. And that's going to be standard for every histogram we do. So we just go through and we fill this out just based on the data that we had, and we'll finish that up there. So you should get something that looks like this. I have a height of 0, I have a height of 4, I have 6, 7, 2, and 3. Pretty straightforward. Here's another example of a data set. I just went through and I already grouped them and counted them up for us because I want to show you a slightly different way we can represent data in a histogram. And think back to the two-way tables that we did. We had frequency two-way tables, and then we also had relative frequency two-way tables. Well, we can do the same thing with histograms. So rather than just count the total numbers we have, what we can actually do is we can do relative frequencies within this histogram. So I need to know my total, which is 31. And so out of that total, I have 4 in this group. So I divide 4 by 31, and I get the decimal 0.129. That is my relative frequency for 45 to 49 degree daily high temperatures in Fahrenheit. And I'm going to do the same thing again here, except this time I'm doing 7 divided by 31 because that's how many I had for this group. So 0.2258, so I'm going to round that to a 6. Alright, so go ahead, pause the video, take a second to fill in the rest of this chart. Alrighty, go ahead and check, make sure that you're on the same page as me. Once we have that good to go, we can go ahead and make a relative frequency histogram. So I already made this histogram, the just the frequency histogram for you. See if you can do it on your own though, and then check your work with mine. But we're going to do the relative frequency histogram together. So I have mine set up here. I'm still choosing the same bin widths as before, so 40 to 44, 45 to 49, and on. But this time you'll notice my y-axis, instead of having the numbers 0 through 10, now I have decimal points. And these decimals are going to be my relative frequencies, which is a representation of the percent of my data that I have in each bin. So since I had nothing, I had no 40 to 44 degree days, I still have my 0 bar there. And just like before, now I'm going to work this out and just kind of graph my bar at the height that represents the frequency it has. So for 0.129 frequency, I'm going to go up to 1. This will be 0.125, so I need to go just a little bit past that. I overshot it a bit, but you get the idea. And so now for 50 to 54, I have 0.226. So this is going to be pretty much square on my 0.225 height, just slightly past it. I'm not zoomed in enough to where you can really see it. But go ahead and sketch out the rest of your relative frequency histogram and see if yours matches mine. All right, how did we do? Now, your histograms don't have to be exact, but try to make them as nice and neat as you can. Use a straight edge if you have one, and then try to get your bar heights as close to the frequencies or relative frequencies that you have based on what you're doing. Alrighty, that's it for today's notes on histograms. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and enjoy the rest of your day.